Console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class. Welcome to episode 17 of On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast. Today we are talking about the crossbow. I am your host, Brent Stewart McKee, and my co-host today is...
I'm Joshua.
So today we are talking about the crossbow, and it is a unique design. It is influential, but it's not the crossbow you're thinking of. It's not the Omni-Mech. Likely inspired the Omni-Mech, but it is not the Omni-Mech.
As might not surprise people. Going all the way back to 2470 in the Lyran Commonwealth.
So this guy's got the design quirks of modular weapons, LRM-10, and it is obsolete from 2550 to 3070. It also has poor targeting at long range. So this guy looks very cool in my opinion, especially the prototype. The prototype has a very boxy, modular, the tank look, battle tank look to it, which I think works really well. The arms, you can see what they're doing, and the modular design is quite well defined and nice to look at. But for me, the torso is where it really shines. It's got that nice sort of boxy, slanted frame to it. The cockpit sits nicely in the center, and it's got the nice little antennas off to the back that are kind of cute.
Yeah, it's hard to tell scale, but the cockpit glass on this guy might be a little restricted.
A little narrow.
Yeah.
So we have the prototype art, and then we have the regular art, which is one that I am less of a fan of. It still looks good, don't get me wrong, and you can see what's going on, but it definitely feels older, especially around the torso, which has kind of more of a triangular shape to it as opposed to the boxy shape.
What really gets me is the hip and shoulder joints.
The shoulder joints are the ones that stand out to me, whereas the prototype has a kind of box joint around it for protection. The regular art looks like it's got two kind of armor plates protecting the joints just out from the side.
Yeah, I was talking more about how is the arm attached to that ball.
Also fair.
Same with the hips, even worse on the hips.
Yeah.
The prototype art, it looks like you've got multiple points of articulation. You can see where it's going to rotate in the vertical axis. You can see where it's going to rotate in the horizontal axis. They're two different points. The art from TRO 3075, they're BB-8 balls. They're just stuck on there and stay on by space magic, I guess.
Yeah, like especially the hip joints. If the ball is the part that rotates and moves, which it looks like it wants to, considering you can almost see the rivets that attach to the leg, frame, armor, however you want to describe it, that means that there is the grip and movement for over 180 degrees in one vector and probably around 30 degrees in another vector in that very small area.
Yeah. For people who are just listening, picture the human hip joints, but you have no muscle holding it to the pelvis. It's just kind of glued in there and supposed to move on its own without...
Or a ball and socket joint, but the socket is a single point.
Yes, that too. But moving away from the less than functional looking art, let's talk about Crossbow CRSX.
So it first appeared in 2468, and it's an Arcturian arms design. They designed this mech hoping to break into the lucrative battle mech market, designed as a fast cavalry unit meant to engage at long range with missiles and then close with the energy weapons. The prototype fell short of these goals, with a mediocre speed and a heat dissipation issue, and also having an accuracy issue at long range. Less than a dozen prototypes were fully constructed, and the prototypes were rejected overall. Arcturus Arms shelved the units and won a supplemental contract building Banshees, allowing them to gain experience and knowledge they used to refine the X into the 6B. It has the design quirks of being a prototype, poor targeting long range, poor cooling jacket in the large laser, and obsolete by 2490. A battle value of 969 and a point value of 27. The armaments for this guy are a large laser in the right torso, and 2 LRM-5s in the right arm, a medium laser in the right arm, 2 LRM-5s in the left arm, and a medium laser in the left arm. Movement of 4-6 with 10 heat sinks. So it's going to generate a lot of heat.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a problem. To be fair, Arcturan Arms had never built a battle mech before. They weren't part of the previous orders and production for Lyran battle mechs, so they're going into this with no real experience or knowledge. So it's not surprising that they've got a few performance issues.
But it looks good.
It looks good, and they obviously did a good enough job developing their techniques and designing this mech that the Commonwealth said, you know what, we don't like this mech, but you've got guts, kid, and they gave him a contract for the Banshee.
So after this guy, they developed the 6B. It came out in 2473, and its most notable feature is the arms and the fact that they are modular, and that the weapons and the ammo are all inside the arm assembly, so you don't have to feed any ammo through the articulation joints or actuators. Very good design, in my opinion.
Definitely has some advantages.
It's still lightly armored due to mismanagement and corporate overreach. What was intended to be a massive production output ended up being a limited run, with only about 337 6Bs being produced before the contract was cancelled in 2490. It's got a battle value of 1210 and a point value of 34. And this guy's got a PPC in the right torso, so upgrading from that large laser. It combines the LRM-5s into an LRM-10 in the right arm, still keeps that medium laser in the right arm. Again, the LRM-5s are replaced with an LRM-10 in the left arm, and the medium laser in the left arm remains a constant. It's got a movement profile of 5'8", and it's got 10 heat sinks to handle that weapon loadout. So not gonna manage that heat super well if you're firing that PPC.
Yeah, early mechs are hot. That's something we've been seeing over and over again.
This is true.
I mean, for what it wants to do, it knows what it wants to do at least. It wants to be a long-range fire support type mech. 60 tons with a standard fusion engine. You get your most tonnage at 55 and 60 tons, your most spare tonnage. So that's a nice optimized speed and tonnage right there. If they'd had double heatsink technology, this would not have been a bad design in my opinion.
So after the 6B, what comes after that?
We get the 6C. And that was basically them going, this is kind of running hot and we need something that can deal up close. So they dropped both LRMs. So this is no longer a long-range fire support mech. They dropped both LRMs and the medium laser out of the right arm, and they used that tonnage to add a autocannon 10 in the place of that medium laser and the right arm LRM 10. They kept the PPC and they kept the left arm medium laser. So this 6C is supposed to be kind of a brawler. I disagree with that classification. I think they missed the mark with what they were doing there, but I do think it's pretty solid. You still run a little hot with only 10 single heat sinks. So anytime you fire that PPC and move, you're going to be gaining heat. But as anybody who's played MechWarrior Online knows, there's an advantage to putting a majority of your weapons on one side. It lets you take advantage of cover, expose the minimum possible amount of your mech to fire as you possibly can. And right torso, right arm, not a bad setup for 2 10 points of damage weapons. It definitely wants to be kind of a mid-range fighter, I think, rather than a close-range brawler, since it lacks SRMs and a whole bevy of medium or small lasers. But your AC-10 and PPC match up decently for range brackets. Yeah, I don't think it's terrible.
I just think it still runs a little hot for my taste.
Yeah, you definitely have to manage heat, but the nice thing is you can fire your AC-10, your PPC, and move, even run, gain 15 heat, and then fire your AC-10 and move and dissipate all your extra heat. So you can't alpha strike all the time, but it will manage heat very well.
Yeah, it's not backbreaking, but it's definitely something you gotta practice.
That is one aspect of BattleTech gameplay in most formats, is managing your heat. So it's a lot easier than some more popular and more widely used mechs.
Oh yeah.
I get why you find it a little warm, but I don't think it's catastrophically or unwarrantedly warm.
That's fair. So it's got a battle value of 1204 and a point value of 28.
And that came out in 2481. and unfortunately didn't really take off. Arcturan Arms just doesn't have a lot of luck with this crossbow back during the Age of War, and they were eventually bought out in 2541, so right around the time the Star League was being founded.
Mm-hmm.
The Lyran Commonwealth reactivated the old Arcturan Arms factory during the Jihad to debut the Crossbow 6A, which uses the same chassis and engine as the 6B, so 5.8, 60 tons, and they pulled the LRM-10s to give it Streak SRM-6 launchers. They bumped the medium lasers up to ER, medium lasers. They traded out the PPC of the 6B for an extended range large laser and bumped those heat sinks up to double strength.
Mm-hmm.
So double heat sinks, 2 Streak SRM-6s, 2 ER medium lasers, and an ER large laser. So you're never going to overheat while you're closing with your large laser.
Mm-hmm.
You run the risk of overheating if you successfully fire both streaks and move, and you fire ER medium lasers and your ER large laser. But again, they're streaks, so if they're not going to hit, they're not going to fire.
And therefore no heat.
Yes. So this is a really on the edge of your heat management right here with this mech. But because you took those Streak SRM-6s, if you miss, you don't gain that heat, which is really helping you ride that fine line on your heat. And they had just enough weight left over to up the tonnage on the armor, and they had enough critical slots open to switch to ferrofibrosis. So it's also the best protected out of the designs. With actually the record sheet doesn't say exactly how much armor it has total.
No, but it's got more than the other models.
So that is the last cannon variant. Clocks in at 1583 for the BV and 40 PV for Alpha Strike.
So because we have so few models, we are going to do our new segment called Retrofit Redesign. And what we're doing is we're taking the chassis, one of the models, and tuning it to how we would want to do it or build it for us. I'll start us off with the 9U for Ouroboros and kept the walking profile the same engines. I stripped out the weapon systems in the torso, and I took out the medium lasers in both arms because I built it off of the 9A. I didn't add any armor, so that stays the same. I added a light PPC to the left torso and the right torso, and in each of the arms I added another Streak SRM-6. I also switched out the frame to endosteel and added a light fusion engine and an XL gyro to help pay for that tonnage.
Okay.
So basically using up all the critical slots I could.
And you've doubled your Streak SRM-6s, so you really want to get in there and brawl.
I looked at this design, I looked at the mech, and it was like, okay, it's a crossbow. What are crossbows? They are a short-range archery weapon that pack a lot of power and penetration. So doubling down on those SRM-6s really felt right. Kept the spirit of what we're going for with this mech.
Yeah, I can see that. Battletech has that motif that archery-named mechs are missile mechs, because I wouldn't really consider SRMs to be a weapon with a lot of armor penetration or punch, but
when you put 4 of them together,
you're going to do some serious damage. Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't need to add any extra ammo because if, like we've mentioned before, they're streaks, so if they don't lock on, they're not going to fire, conserving the ammo.
Yeah.
And I added 1 more heatsink and bumped them up to doubles so I can dissipate 22 heat. So I have a battle value of 1,626.
I like to have a little bit of lore behind mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at this and I said, all right, they reactivated the factory for the Jihad. The Lyran Commonwealth is getting hammered in the Dark Ages. So if I am the Lyran Commonwealth in the Dark Ages and I need a fast cavalry mech, getting back to the origin of this design, what do? I kept the same movement profile, 580, and I upgraded the engine to the light engine. I mean, the Lyrans came up with the light. Well, the Lyrans stole the light engine from the Wolf's Dragoons, but it's a Lyran bit of tech. Annexed, yes, I like that. And I wanted to keep the same kind of loadout. Like it's the way this mech is designed. Let's kind of not stress what we're doing with it. So based off of the 6B, the Crossbow 6J for Joshua upgrades the PPC to a snub nose PPC, upgrades both LRM-10s to MML-9s, keeps the medium lasers. Figure you've got a lot of those, might as well keep them. And then there's 4 tons of ammunition for the MMLs. So there's 1 ton of SRM and 1 ton of LRM in each arm to feed that arm Arms MML9. And the MML9 also has Artemis 4, so really helping increase the number of hits it gets. And then the armor is slightly upgraded from the 6B, but not all the way to the 9A. We've got about 11 tons of light ferrofibrous. So light ferro, light fusion, 2 MML9s with Artemis, 2 medium lasers, and a snub nose PPC.
Doesn't seem too bad. I like the MMLs.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a cavalry mech, so I wanted some long-range firepower. So we kept those LRMs, puts out 18 LRMs at long range with Artemis, so kind of like a LRM 12, 13-ish. So that'll actually upgrade its long-range firepower over the 6B. Snub-nose PPC, shorter range than a standard ER PPC, but a significantly better short range, so it can get in there and get close. From personal experience, I found MMLs and snub-nose PPCs match up real well because you can get into that 7 hex range, or if you really get up close and want to land SRMs, your snub-nose does great up close. And yeah, it'll run a little hot. Sorry, it's got 11 double heat sinks, and it can generate 26 heat with its weapons if it alpha strikes. So the idea is you have enough heat sinks to fire your snub nose and your MMLs while running, but if you bring in your medium lasers, you overheat a little bit.
So next we have pilot profiles, and we have one pilot to talk about today, mech warrior Elizabeth Rains, one of the last known mech warriors to pilot a crossbow in the LCAF, assigned to the 25th Sky Rangers during Operation Mailed Fist during the Reunification Wars, and received commendations and accolades from all, including the Archon. Elizabeth's career and life was cut short during the Day of Rage in 2591. Did you have any other pilots, or because I couldn't find any others?
I don't think there are any other pilots for this. Primitive TROs don't have pilots in them.
No, they don't.
And the only other TRO that the crossbow has appeared in is in TRO 3075, which just has Elizabeth Rains.
Yep.
I should note that she received accolades for her defense of the planet Barcelona that was being used to stage the LCAF against the freedom fighters of the Rimworld's Republic. So I see here Archon Viola Steiner Dennison was the one who commended Rains, and then did she attack the Sentry Lance during the Day of Rage?
So she attacked more than a lance during the Day of Rage, and that's actually our history note for this episode. The Day of Rage happened in early 2591, and the Archon, Viola Dennison Steiner, had been absent for years fighting with the SLDF against the Rimworld Republic in the Reunification Wars, leaving her inexperienced son, Kevin Dennison, as Archon designate, and a separatist faction called the Steering Committee maneuvered a vote to separate from the Star League and then kidnapped Kevin without a trace. This was done covertly, and so blame fell on the Dukes of Skye and Tamar, who had opposed legislation that Kevin put forward. On June 19th, 2591, when the SLDF dropships landed on Barcelona, so did the rumors, and when Archon Viola learned of her son's disappearance, she flew into a blind rage and attacked the camp of the 25th Sky Rangers and the Tamar Tigers, who were under repair and resupply at the time. The Royal Guard were unprepared for the Archon's actions as well. This resulted in the Archon destroying the sentry mechs and then rampaging through the encampment. It quickly turned into a brawl, with the Royal Guards only stepping in to protect the Archon. After all, they didn't wish to fight their fellow countrymen. Despite this, the rampage was ended when Viola's cockpit was smashed in, resulting in a serious life-threatening injury that she survived. By the time the SLDF arrived to secure the area, 117 people had died or could not be saved. Viola regretted this action for the rest of her life. It only widened the rift between Tharkad and Skye and Tamar, respectively.
Yeah, it's interesting that it was Skye in particular, because Skye always seems to be, the Isle of Skye always seemed to be causing trouble for the Lyran Commonwealth.
But it wasn't them this time. It was the Sterling Committee. It was like a legitimate faction inside the government that was like, nah, we're taking you hostage and taking control.
Yeah. But I mean, the Isle of Skye has caused so much trouble for the Steiner family over the centuries that it kind of makes sense, you know? This is something Skye would do.
Definitely added to the bad blood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's sad that Mech Warrior Rains was one of the 117, and it sounds like she was probably one of the few Mech Warriors who was part of that 117, because a lot of the casualties were among tanker crew.
Mm-hmm. And support staff.
Yeah.
So our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, TRO Primitives Volume 2, Record Sheets 3075 Age of War Unabridged, 3075 TRO, Solaris Skunkworks, and Historical Reunification Wars. We are supported by our Patreons at patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a dedicated channel on the Everything Battletech Discord. Feel free to stop by and say hi. If you have any questions, requests for topics, or wish to contact us, our email is ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, I encourage you to let your friends know about us and to leave a review. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Peace out, Mech Warriors.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
I'm still learning Solaris Skunkworks. Jeff, you can cut a lot of this. Maybe that's a stinger.